When I came into this world, I have to admit things were already good the way they were. I had to actually give credit to even the things that I didn't have because at least when I didn't have them, I didn't have to worry about them. And as cliche as that sounds, it's already true for things that I have at my disposal, whether I already see them that way or not. The thing was, as I grew up, I had a roller coaster of my own for both either having too many good things or too many bad things. They weren't the same as with everyone else, but they just happened in a way that was somewhat unique before even I would label them as being unique. So I did grow up a bit privileged. Then I immediately had a vector point in my life where I had to basically lose a lot of that at the last second and then get some of it back without even knowing where the good is coming from, and then have some of it lost anyways without being prepared for it, and so on. The thing is that I was a person that was so patient with what I did lose, and I was so forgiving with what I didn't understand. Even with everything else I was doing very cleverly, I was still very brilliant as a person. I actually managed to do things for a reason, if not everything for a reason, without knowing what was happening around me. And so what it ends up with is that of the likes to people, for instance, seeing me as the exact opposite of who I actually was, even if those valuable ways of seeing me were just as important as my own self identity. So you would see this happen with not just people, but even my own surroundings. Maybe perhaps obviously being related to life, but it would be that they would think that I did know what I was doing, but I clearly knew what was happening around me. And that's a bit of its own tragedy alone. The biggest part of my tragedy arguably seems to be that I am a confused person, that I don't have to know what's happening and I can still make things work in my favor. So I'm what you have is what a person who calls himself a cunning without being intelligent person, because his own philosophy for intelligence is are identifying with how you don't have to know more than someone else to be of their competitor. And even with things like going as far as you can rather than being a competitor, those are amongst things I would rather debacle with. I would rather challenge those ideals than go with them just because they can help. Among any other things of advice or listening to things that would be of help to me as well. I've always been seen with all these polar extremes like listening skills, because like especially with listening skills, you look at how good I am at listening to other people, and on the other end of that, how bad I am at listening to other people, and then all these other polarities that happen. My life is just not necessarily something I'm used to. I've had what technically would have been hypersensitivity to things that I didn't understand and also already understood, and other paradoxes. And that's just one example. That may be even connected to my porn addiction, for example. But then you have that tied into other things, like how people are telling me that something doesn't matter or something only matters, as you would have seen in an earlier video of mine, especially from the deep talks or claimations alike. I am someone who already cared about themselves, but everyone else thought that he didn't. And as much as I shouldn't care what other people think of me, it still mattered to me that there was something that they knew that I didn't, that they took for granted. And I mean that in a good way. When I say take for granted, I don't mean that it's a given the same way. I just mean that it's a blessing, a somber joy, as I've said before. A somber joy that there are things that I have that I've already had straight out of the bottle, but at the same time things that I knew were missing that I didn't have to have, eventually could have, or never have to have, even if they still mattered to have. And if I don't have them, it's still going to be okay.